Hi, I'm Hunter, and this is the Mysteries of History channel, where we will cover some of history's most enduring mysteries. Some are well known. Others are somewhat more obscure, but what connects them is they all remain unsolved. We offer no solutions, as that is beyond the scope of this channel. We only seek to bring these mysteries into the light, and we would appreciate your company on the journey. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon, so you never miss a video. The year is 1971. The date: November 24th. A fairly nondescript man boarded Northwest Airlines Flight 305 from Portland to Seattle, a roughly 30-minute flight, took his seat, calmly lit a cigarette, as smoking on planes was still permissible at the time, and ordered a bourbon and soda, for which he paid cash. Later described by witnesses as being in his mid-40s, he wore a dark suit, a black tie, with a mother-of-pearl tie clip, a crisp, clean, well-pressed shirt, and carried a black attaché case. He was calm, polite, and well-spoken, the very antithesis of the stereotypical hijacker, which were most often perceived as raging, hardened criminal types, with a take-me-to-Cuba attitude. He looked, for all intents and purposes, not at all dissimilar to any of the thousands of other businessmen who take flights crisscrossing the nation on any given day, before Flight 305 or since. Except this man wound up being very different indeed. Shortly after takeoff, the man passed the 23-year-old stewardess a folded slip of paper. From her past experiences with male passengers, she assumed it to be the man's phone number, so she ignored it.
Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb.
What the note said will never be known, as the man reclaimed it from the stewardess, and ordered her to sit next to him. What is known is that the man demanded $200,000 in negotiable American currency, worth about $1.4 million in today's money, a fuel truck to fill up the plane, and 4 parachutes, all to be ready when they reached Seattle, although it would take longer than the half hour the trip normally required. The young stewardess took the man's instructions to the captain, who then relayed them to the appropriate people. The president of Northwest Airlines authorized full cooperation when he learned of the hijacking. When the stewardess returned to her newly assigned seat, she noticed the man now wore dark sunglasses. None of the other passengers on the plane had even the foggiest notion what was happening. They were told that a mechanical glitch of some kind had delayed their landing for a couple of hours, while the money, fuel, and parachutes were gathered. At 5:24 p.m., the man was informed that his demands had been met, and he allowed the plane to land. It touched down at 5:39 p.m. As the plane was being refueled, the man released the passengers and 2 of the flight crew, retaining the pilot, co-pilot, and 2 others. Distrusting of the military parachutes he was offered by personnel from McCord Air Force Base, the man demanded and received civilian chutes with manual ripcords. After landing, the man instructed the pilot to taxi to an isolated, well-lit area, and ordered all the window shades put down, presumably to preemptively deter any police snipers from taking a shot at him. The refueling time was extended when a vapor lock occurred in the truck's pump, requiring a second truck to be brought in to complete the process. Rejecting a face-to-face meeting with an official from the FAA, the man then shared with the remaining flight crew his plan to fly southeast towards Mexico City at the minimum possible safe airspeed, with another fuel stop in Reno, Nevada. Around 7:40 p.m., the Boeing 727 took off from Seattle, surreptitiously shadowed by 2 F-106 fighter aircraft, one above, one below, remaining out of the man's sight. Shortly after takeoff, the man instructed the remaining flight attendant aboard to join the rest of the crew in the cockpit. Just before she closed the cockpit door, she managed to catch a glimpse of the man tying what she assumed was the bag containing the ransom money around his waist. That was the last verified sighting of the hijacker. At approximately 8 p.m., a warning light flashed in the cockpit, notifying the crew that the rear hatch was opening, and the air stair was deploying. 15 minutes later, the crew noticed the air pressure change that indicated the rear hatch was fully open. The plane landed at Reno 2 hours later with the rear hatch still open, and the air stair still deployed. The plane was immediately surrounded by a multitude of law enforcement agents, including Reno police, Nevada state troopers, sheriff's deputies, and FBI agents. An armed and thorough search of the 727 confirmed the man was gone. All that was found on board the plane was his tie, the tie clip, and 2 of the parachutes, both of which had been sabotaged. The polite hijacker had purchased his one-way ticket from Portland to Seattle under the name Dan Cooper, later found to most likely be a pseudonym. The press, while covering the sensational story, accidentally conflated a suspect's name with that of the hijacker's nom de guerre, reporting it as D.B. Cooper, and the mashup became what the man is known by today. At no time did either pilot in the trailing F-106 fighters visually see anyone or anything exit the aircraft, but due to the dark of night and the low-level clouds that obscured the ground lighting, that's entirely understandable. They also didn't pick anything up on radar. The FBI immediately began interviewing suspects, including an Oregon man named D.B. Cooper, who was contacted by the Portland police in the hopes that the hijacker had mistakenly used his real name. He had a minor criminal record, but certainly nothing that would indicate he could pull off a hijacking, and he was quickly ruled out as a suspect. But a local reporter, rushing to meet a deadline, mistakenly gave his name as the name the hijacker used. The erroneous report was quickly picked up nationally, and the rest, as they say, is history. After it became clear that the hijacker exited the 727 while it was in flight, a search was quickly organized. Unfortunately, it became obvious fairly early in the process that a precise search area would be difficult to define. Without being able to estimate how long the man remained in freefall, indeed not knowing if the man even managed to open his chute, any search seemed doomed to almost certain failure, although that didn't stop the search from proceeding. While the search was ongoing, the FBI experimentally recreated the conditions in which the hijacker made his leap from the plane. They had the same pilot, flying the actual aircraft, and in the same configuration in which it was flown on the night of the hijacking. By pushing a 200-pound sled from the rear air stairs, they determined the man jumped at about 8:13 p.m., just as the aircraft flew over the Lewis River in southwestern Washington. At the estimated jump time, the 727 was flying through a heavy rainstorm, adding even more complexity to the equation when trying to narrow down the hijacker's possible landing spots. They initially believed the hijacker, if he survived the jump, might have landed near Lake Merwin, a man-made lake situated a few miles southeast of the town of Ariel, Washington. Focusing on Clark and Cowlitz counties, agents and deputies searched large tracts of the mountainous wilderness, even conducting searches of local farmhouses. No sign of him was found. The FBI also conducted an aerial search along the plane's flight path, known as Victor 23, from Seattle to Reno. Although some broken treetops, and several objects resembling parachute canopies were located, again, nothing related to the hijacking was ever found. Immediately after the spring thaw in 1972, the FBI, along with soldiers from Fort Lewis, airmen from McCord Air Base, National Guard personnel, and some civilian volunteers conducted 2 exhaustive 18-day searches of Clark and Cowlitz counties, first in March, then again in April. Although skeletal remains were found in Clark County during one of those searches, when 2 women stumbled upon them in an abandoned building, they were later identified to be those of Barbara Derry, who had been abducted and murdered several weeks prior to the discovery. The search, considered one of the most extensive and intensive searches in history, ultimately uncovered nothing substantial related to the hijacking. About a month after the hijacking, the FBI sent a list of the serial numbers of the money given to the hijacker to businesses that routinely dealt with large transactions, such as banks and casinos. One of the reasons it took some time to gather the money on the night of the hijacking was that the serial numbers needed to be recorded on microfiche, in the hope that someone caught using the cash in the future would be, or could lead authorities to, the hijacker. Early in 1972, the Attorney General of the United States released the serial numbers to the general public. To this day, most of the money has never been found or used, although there was at least one incident involving some conmen caught using counterfeit bills printed with serial numbers from the still missing cash. Over the next couple of years, several newspapers offered rewards ranging from $1,000 to a few $1,000s, if any of the money were turned into either the papers, or to authorities. Those rewards went unclaimed, although there were a few near matches. After 1974, all such reward offers ceased. A reanalysis of the night of the hijacking led to the suspicion that the initial search area was incorrect. The pilot of Flight 305, who was flying the plane manually due to the hijacker's flight parameters, came to believe the plane was farther east than was first thought. The pilot of another airliner, which was about 4 minutes behind Flight 305 on the same flight path, told authorities that their calculations of wind speed and direction were off, perhaps by as much as 80 degrees. If true, the hijacker may have landed in the drainage area of the Washougal River, well south-southeast of the original search area. The Washougal Valley, and its surrounds, have been searched many times over the ensuing decades, both by law enforcement, and by private individuals and groups, but nothing of relevance has ever been found. Some believe the eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980 destroyed any physical evidence that may have remained in the area. In February of 1980, a young boy, who was vacationing with his family at Tina Bar, a beachfront located about 20 miles southwest of Ariel, Washington, on the Columbia River, found 3 bundles of disintegrating money, held together with rubber bands, as he raked an area of the riverbank to start a campfire. Technicians from the FBI confirmed it was part of the ransom money, and the bills were still in the same order in which they had been given to the hijacker. How the money got to where it was found is still as much of a mystery as the identity and fate of the hijacker. On the 8th of July, 2016, the FBI announced that it would no longer actively investigate the case of the most polite of hijackings, citing the need to use the resources elsewhere in other investigations. Local FBI offices will still be open to handle any legitimate physical evidence believed to be connected to the case, particularly ransom money and parachute-related. The hijacking of Flight 305 by a man calling himself Dan Cooper, whom the press mistakenly dubbed DB Cooper, remains the only unsolved hijacking/air piracy in American history. This case has always fascinated me. Given that he was in no way prepared to deal with the weather conditions when he jumped, I have no trouble believing the hijacker died during his attempt to jump from the plane. But there's always that small part of me that thinks he could have survived, going on to live out the rest of his life in an otherwise normal way, with nobody the wiser. We'll probably never know. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also subscribe to our other channel, Unexpected History. The link will be in the description below, along with the links to our Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, and merch pages. Thank you for watching Mysteries of History. We'll see you in the next one.